Hello, curious minds. Thank you for checking out my video on genetics. My name is Julia, and today I'm going to be discussing a very rare but very serious genetic disorder called Maple Syrup Urine Disease, or MSUD for short. So, maple syrup urine disease is an inherited metabolic disorder where the body cannot metabolize certain amino acids in protein-rich foods. These amino acids consist of valine, leucine, and isoleucine, all of which can be found in foods like dairy, meat, grains, and nuts. Now, amino acids, for those of you who are not familiar with amino acids, are like the molecular building blocks in proteins. And in healthy individuals, the body can break these amino acids down into their molecular forms. However, in individuals with MSUD, the body cannot break these amino acids down, and instead they build up in the bloodstream and can flow to our brain. This can lead to the distinct sweet-smelling maple syrup odor present in urine, for which the disorder is named. And it can also lead to other symptoms such as poor feeding, vomiting, trouble growing or gaining weight, abnormal movements, lack of energy known as lethargy, irritability, and developmental delays. Now, maple syrup urine disease can appear as early as birth through early childhood, but it's usually much more prevalent at birth, which is also the most severe type of MSUD, and this is known as the classic subtype. Now, if it happens later in childhood, whether it is weeks, months to years later, then these symptoms tend to be much milder. However, if these symptoms are not dealt with in a timely manner, then MSUD can lead to more severe symptoms such as seizures, coma, and eventually death. Fortunately, though, MSUD is very rare. Worldwide, it only affects every 1 to 185,000 births. However, in 1978, a study reveals that it is much more common in old Mennonite populations, occurring in every 1 out of 380 births. So let's talk a little bit about how it is inherited. MSUD is an autosomal recessive disorder, which means that in order to inherit the disorder, an individual must inherit one recessive gene from their mother and one recessive gene from their father. And here I have 3 examples for how MSUD can present itself in future generations. In scenario 1, we have a father who is healthy and a mother who has MSUD. When we cross their genes, we receive a 100% chance of all potential offspring being carriers of the disorder. Now in scenario 2, the mother is still affected by the disorder, but the father, instead of being healthy, is actually a carrier of the disorder. And how this represents in their offspring is the offspring have a 50% chance of becoming affected or a 50% chance of becoming carriers of the disorder. Now in scenario 3, we have 2 parents who are carriers of the disorder, and they have a 25% chance of producing offspring who are completely healthy, 25% offspring of producing children who will inherit the disease, and a 50% chance of their children becoming carriers of the disorder. Now, as carriers, they will not develop the disorder, but they do have the potential to pass it down to future generations. So let's talk about what this means for future generations. Here we have a hypothetical pedigree, which is a family tree of an old Mennonite family that traces the autosomal recessive disorder down through the generations. As you can see, autosomal recessive disorders are not present in every generation, but they do have the potential to become present in every generation, if not skip generations. And as we navigate our way through the family tree, we notice several family members who are carriers for the disorder, as well as family members who are completely healthy for the disorder. It's not until generation 3 that we notice that the disorder starts to become prevalent in 4 of the children, and it has already claimed the life of 1 child. And the reason why MSUD is so much more prevalent in old Mennonite populations is because of how isolated these communities are from the rest of the human populace. And this leads to higher chances of inbreeding and therefore sharing genes with other family members who have similar DNA. Now that we've talked about how it's inherited, let's take a closer look at the genes associated with MSUD. So the genes that are responsible for causing MSUD can be found on chromosome 19. In the human cell, we each contain 46 chromosomes, 23 from our mother and 23 from our father. 22 out of 23 are autosomes, meaning that they have absolutely nothing to do with the sex that we were assigned at birth. And the 23rd chromosome, as you can see in this graph to my left, which is called a karyotype, that one is directly related to an individual's sex. And as we can see, XY means male, whereas XX would mean female. And chromosome 19 is where we can find the genes associated with maple syrup urine disease. And these genes consist of BCK-DHA, BCK-DHB, and DBT. Together, all of these genes encode a special protein called the BCKD enzyme complex, and each gene transcribes a different part of the complex. As you can see, BCK-DHA transcribes the alpha unit of the E1 enzyme, whereas BCK-DHB transcribes for the beta branch of the same enzyme. Finally, DBT transcribes for enzyme 2, which is this transclade over here, and this particular enzyme is located in the mitochondria of cells. This protein is responsible for initiating step 2 and bringing down the amino acids in protein-rich foods. However, in an individual with maple syrup urine disease, this protein does not function properly, and this is due to mutations that occur in the DNA sequences. Mutations can be caused from anything from viruses to environmental factors to replication errors that occur during cell division. And these mutations result in frameshift mutations that rearrange codons in the DNA sequence and essentially rewrite the genetic code needed to build the amino acids that construct this protein that help break down amino acids in protein-rich foods. So these mutations, because they rewrite or delete or rearrange the genetic code, they create what are called frameshift mutations and missense mutations in that order. In the BCKDA gene, they have found 80 mutations associated with maple syrup urine disease. In the beta branch, they have found 90 mutations, and in DBT, they have found 70 mutations. Also, a study conducted in Malaysia in 2018 found an additional 14 mutations in patients with MSUD. So the good news is there are genetic testings and screenings that individuals can pursue in order to mitigate the more severe effects of this disorder. Early detection is actually recommended for families who have a family history of the disorder. And currently, genetic screening is now mandatory for all newborns in the United States and consists of a very particular screening, which is called the Pan-Ethic Carrier Screen gene sequencing channel. And this analyzes deletions, duplications, exons, and entire coding regions in the DBT gene and the BCKD enzyme complex. In addition, genetic testing is still needed in order to confirm that MSUD is present in an individual, and this can be confirmed through a simple blood or urine test. Now, while there is no cure for MSUD, it is recommended that families with a family history do seek genetic counseling to estimate if whether or not they have a higher likelihood of passing the disease down to their offspring. There is hope, the future is bright, however, for individuals with this disorder. Gene therapy is available, as well as receiving a liver transplant, which does not necessarily get rid of the disease, but it can offset some of the more severe symptoms associated with maple syrup urine disease. The best thing that an individual with maple syrup urine disease can do is undergo a special diet that is very low in proteins, consists mostly of vitamins, amino acid supplements, as well as BCAAs. And for babies, this includes a very special formula that is also low in protein. Also, regular blood tests with one's doctor is highly recommended to check for amino acid levels in the blood and make sure that they are at a stable level. So that is all I have for you today on maple syrup urine disease. I hope to see you again on the future for more interesting facts for curious minds. I hope you enjoyed this video and leave any comments that you may have in the suggestion box below. Thank you and have a great rest of your experience at Doane University.